Hi, boys and girls, it's Mrs. Burke. Welcome back to another writing lesson. Today, we're going to explore a few different types of nonfiction books and nonfiction writing. We are wrapping up our nonfiction unit, and we've spent a lot of time in books that present a lot of factual information, books about animals, books about the world around you. But I also want you to be aware that there's a few other types of nonfiction books that you can enjoy. One is narrative nonfiction, and one is biographies. If you're ready, let's get started. So, again, boys and girls, there are many different types of nonfiction books to explore. Just like when you read fiction, there's a whole variety of books that you can read. We have the same thing in nonfiction. In nonfiction, you can read a lot of books that give you facts about the world around you, facts about animals. But you can also read some books that sound a little more like fiction, called narrative nonfiction. And you can also read books about people's lives, which are called biographies. Sometimes you can even read autobiographies, which is a book written by somebody about their very own life. Let's take a look at these different types of nonfiction books. Let's first start with biographies. Now, some of these titles might be familiar to you because you have seen them in lessons in the past few weeks. Biographies tell the story of a person's life. Now, biographies are very interesting because biographies give you a lot of facts about a person's life. Usually, biographies begin with when the person was born, and it tells a little bit about their childhood, and it builds up to telling you about the person's greatest accomplishments. Often by the end of the book, the person in the book has passed away, and so you learn where they died or how they died, and you may also learn whether or not there's a memorial or a monument to that person somewhere in the world. Some books are written about people who are still alive, so obviously they do not die in the book. There are other books that are written in fun ways that are meant to celebrate a person's life without dwelling on the fact that they have passed on. And they're kind of a little more of a living story. When you look at the books like this one in the middle, Ordinary People Who Changed the World, this one's called I Am Helen Keller. This book is really exciting. It's written by Brad Meltzer, and he writes it in a graphic novel style. So as you're reading it, it almost reads like a comic book. And in his books, he actually tells the story in a narrative nonfiction way, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And as he's telling the story, he focuses on the person's life and the person's childhood and the person's accomplishments. He doesn't touch upon their death because it's meant to be a living story celebrating this person's life. So right now, a lot of biographies are evolving and they're starting to look a little more like Brad Meltzer's biographies, but you can also find the very traditional biographies which follow that format that I spoke of at first, telling you about the end of a person's life and memorials and tributes and monuments to those people. So anyway, to sum up, when you read a biography, you're learning the story of somebody's life. You're learning about their childhood. You're learning about their family. You're learning about what made them interested in the thing that made them great in this world. What were their greatest accomplishments? And oftentimes in a biography, you'll learn if the person is still alive or if they're no longer living, and if there's memorials or monuments somewhere out there in the world for them. Let's move on to narrative nonfiction. Narrative nonfiction is pretty fun because narrative nonfiction is written like a story. So when you read narrative nonfiction, it sounds and feels very much like fiction. In these books, you will often find a beginning, middle, and end that follows the format of meeting the characters, discovering their problems, trying to come up with a solution, and it will work through those elements of beginning, middle, and end, character setting, problem, and solution. Other times when you read narrative nonfiction, it can also sometimes sound like poetry. It can be written in prose. So the book Bat Loves the Night is written in prose. You'll hear a lot of words that rhyme in the sentences. You'll hear a lot of alliteration, words that have the same beginning sounds. So, narrative nonfiction is very, very exciting to read, especially if you're a big fan of fiction. If you're a big fan of fiction, narrative nonfiction might be for you. Now, be careful. It can be difficult to tell the difference between narrative nonfiction and realistic fiction. Oftentimes, with narrative nonfiction, if it's telling you the story of somebody's life, there will usually be an extra page in the book at the end that gives you a quick biography of that person. Also, if you're reading narrative nonfiction about animals, you can usually identify it because near the pictures or sometimes in sidebars, it will give you some straight up facts or little fun facts. So it will be a little easier for you to identify it as narrative nonfiction. Boys and girls, I hope you take some time to explore biographies and narrative nonfiction. I absolutely love reading biographies. I absolutely love reading narrative nonfiction. I'm going to give you an opportunity to explore a few biographies and a few narrative nonfiction books. In your seesaw lesson, you will have a choice board with 4 different books. I want you to explore 2 of them, and I want you to make a comment, use the video camera to kind of tell me your thoughts and feelings or connections about the book. All right, boys and girls, as always, do your best work and have fun.